David, central bank digital currency, why don't they just turn around and go, let's just wipe out all this extraordinary monopoly money and start again?
So I have a question. Everything. Yeah, I have a question for you. If they do that, how about all the people and all the institutions? Well, we just saw it with Silicon Valley Bank. Mm-hmm. What if you just wipe out all that debt to the government is somebody else's asset? So you can't. How do you do that? You can't wipe out debt because you're wiping out the asset. That will basically say the end of the world. I mean, it's impossible. I laugh when people say, "Oh, we're just going to reset." Exactly. How do you do that when somebody owns that debt?
Well,
the banks own that debt. People.
I understand what you're saying. That there's a debt and there's a credit.
There's an asset and a liability.
Correct. But and the U.S. dollar is currently the federal. Is the world's reserve currency.
Reserve currency. Yep.
But right now we're seeing a little bit of a shift with the BRICS and the movement to that. And I'm looking at it and thinking, is there going to be, I understand what you're saying about the economy, but I wonder if there's going to be a complete shift away from the US dollar, because Russia and China, India, these are big, big markets, are turning around saying, we don't need the US dollar anymore. And on top of that, I'm watching central banks buying gold in bigger volumes than they ever have done in the past.
Yeah, not mostly China and Russia. I mean, they're the ones that are buying gold, because you can see their plan. It's pretty obvious. They intend to wipe out the dollar as reserve currency, and they know that was the thing that gave us the ace in the hole. That was why we were so powerful. Yeah. So their whole intent is to do that. And I think to some extent, this whole, moving us into what I'm describing, maybe they had a role in that. I don't know whether this is just psychology at work or whatever, or super cycle at its end, but it fits their desires, because the Western world is going to be in a whole heap of trouble. Yeah. So, but in terms of reserve currency, my take on it, and I'm no expert, but I don't think it makes a lot of headlines, and certainly you're going to see Saudis trade with China in without the dollar, and you're going to see places where it's going to happen. But the dollar is not going away as a reserve currency in the next 5 years. I think it could after that, and I think I have what I'm describing in terms of that big run up in rates and inflation, and what it basically will bankrupt every government. How do we fund that debt? It ultimately leads to a collapse of the system. I think the 2030s are, something that I can't even imagine. I sometimes say imagine, because this is what I'm calling for: a collapse of the U.S. government, a collapse of Australia, a collapse of any Canadian government, etc., a collapse of Europe. How can they fund their debt when interest rates are that high? And people can say, well, how about yield curve control? Look at what Japan's done. We'll just keep our rates low. That's impossible. Rates move with inflation. You can play some games to kind of delay it somewhat, but then it just makes it worse when it happens. So yield curve control and modern monetary theory are laughable. They have no way of working in this environment. So if we're going to move towards a collapse, I predict, or I don't predict, I say this is what I could foresee. If you're talking about 20% interest rates, trying to finance, a $50 trillion federal debt, it doesn't work. The math doesn't work. The government collapses. You're going to be talking about an economy collapsing at the same time, a serious depression. Worldwide. I could see the U.S. with unemployment rates at 50 to 75%.
Holy moly!
And no unemployment system, no welfare system, no, if anything, a very small Social Security and Medicare, and probably none. I mean, they just won't have the funds to fund anything. So I'm calling for, something that's far worse than the 30s. And I'm not saying that lightly. I don't. People ask, well, how do you invest for that? And I go,
Yeah.
Focus on this decade, because we've got, if I'm right, we've got a melt up, a bust, and then a big inflationary cycle coming before you ever get to what is far enough out that I could be dead wrong, right? So don't lose sleep over the 2030 scenario. Focus on this decade and get your financial house in order this decade.
Okay, and that's a really good segue for me to just turn around and say, on that happy note, David, what would your thoughts be on how to get your house in order? Because I often say to people, David, I said, listen, be prepared, not scared. So we want to be prepared right now. So everyone listening to this, I don't want you to freak out and Chicken Little, the sky is falling in. Let's get prepared. And that's why I want you to listen to people like Dave and go, all right, how do I get my house in order right now?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And here's what I would say is, this is part of understanding, not necessarily that you have to be in the market, but to not get caught at the top. Okay, so very important to understand the risks that are coming and not get caught in this psychology of the moment when things are going to look great at the top, because that's how tops look. And not to get filled with despair at the bottom and be told that, in the depths of the bust, you're going to hear a lot of calls for, we're down for the decade. This isn't coming back. We are on the other side of the bust, and this is the part that I want people to hear. On the other side of the bust, the good news is that the indexes aren't going to do well, because if interest rates go up, PE multiples go down. The reason we had a 41-year bull market, secular bull market, is because interest rates went from 15 to 0. We're going to go 0 to 15 and higher. That means multiples will go back from 20 back to single digits. So indexes aren't going to thrive in that. What will thrive is it will be a huge commodity cycle. We will see commodity moves that we've never seen before. They will be many times what they've been in history. So gold, silver, copper, oil. I think oil's going to $400 to $500 a barrel by the end of the decade. So
wait a minute. You said before. Whoa! You said before that oil was going to come back lower.
I said all in good time, right? So what oil is in the global bust, demand for oil is going to go down, right? I mean, you're going to have worldwide demand for all commodities go down, right? In a very bad economic environment, demand goes down. So we will, in the next year, see oil head towards the 30s. Sometime, my target is 35, but I don't know if it's 30 or 36, but I use 35 as my target for the global bust. And then, because of all that money that's created, oil will, over the course of the balance of the decade, so from 2025 on, or late 2024, oil could go from 35 to 500.
Wow, that's a huge goal.
And think of what we're doing. I mean, this is the insanity of our politicians, and our president in particular. But everybody else is kind of falling right in line. Climate change. We are alternative energy. We are telling and discouraging our fossil fuel companies from searching for new supply. They are all, ESG and all of that is forcing the boards to, not really do their job and not really expend capital to find new sources of energy. And there is zero chance that alternative energy is going to happen fast enough or in magnitude enough to prevent what is going to be a huge supply-demand imbalance in favor of demand. So that means when there's not nearly enough supply to satisfy this ramp up in the economy because of massive money printing and massive fiscal expansion, it's going to lead to a big boom in the industrial economy. Not so much consumer, because he's going to be digging out, and so there's going to be demand for all these commodities, in particular energy. And so natural gas will go through the roof, oil will go through the roof, Copper will go through the roof. Every base metal will go through the roof. Gold and silver will. I predict gold will go to 20,000 and silver will go to 400 to 500 by the end of the decade.
Wow.
So for those that are worrying about the 2030s and what do? I go, what you do is you get yourself into the commodity area after the bust and ride it. Just like if you had bought Apple 10 years ago, or if you had bought, Tesla 10 years ago. This cycle was the cycle of the growth stock and the cycle of the tech stock. Next cycle is going to be the cycle of the commodity. And that includes agricultural commodities. They are going to have a big run too. So there is an opportunity. As bad as the scenario I'm painting about the global bust that's coming in the next year, as bad as that is, what comes on the other side of that is something you can invest in and hopefully secure your future to some extent anyway.